those for Hormel Foundation, where we get like a double conference and put the big tables up and you'd just be here.
Yeah.
Still better than being.
I call to order the February 2024 meeting of the Mission Fulfillment Committee of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. And good morning, everyone. Thank you to those who are joining us via live stream video and those who are attending here in our boardroom or via Zoom. First of all, I would like to welcome our student representatives for today, Nico Vasilopoulos and Taiu Arimo from the Twin Cities campus. And thank you both very much for being here. Before we turn to our agenda, it is my understanding that Provost Croson would like to share an update related to FAFSA delay. So Provost Croson, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and members of the committee. As you may have seen in the news, the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA, has been significantly delayed this year. This means that all universities are not likely to receive information that we use in determining a student's financial aid package until mid-March, with a corresponding delay in informing students and families about their packages. As a result, we've decided to push back the date by which students need to commit in order to attend one of our campuses from May 1st to May 15th for the Twin Cities campus and to June 1 or later for the Greater Minnesota campuses. We've coordinated with student housing and other auxiliaries on each campus so that their deadlines are similarly aligned with the deadline for commitment. As we do every year, we encourage students and families who need more time to make their decision to reach out to the Office of Admissions. We work with them on an individual basis to find a timeline that works for them. We plan to communicate these deadlines to applicants and families starting today, but throughout the rest of the week, and we wanted to make sure that you heard it from us first. I'm happy to take any questions you might have on this topic before we proceed to our first presentation.
Are there any questions for Provost Croson?
Brief one, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, this is all universities are affected in this way, and the happening was at the federal level, and we're just responding in accordance, right?
Exactly, exactly. Typically, we get the information from the federal government in January. I'm looking at, no, Dr. McMaster?
Earlier.
February. And now it looks like mid-March, so we're talking about a 6-week delay.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. And now we will turn to our agenda. The first item on today's agenda is presentation and discussion of the Higher Learning Commission accreditation for the Rochester and Twin Cities campuses in advance of the 2025 review cycle. And here to walk us through the update are Provost Croson, Vice Provost and Dean of the Undergraduate Education, McMaster, Ms. Slettergren, and from the Office of the Executive Vice President and Provost. Provost Croson, would you like to make any opening comments?
Thank you, Chair Johnson, Vice Chair Kenyanya, and members of the committee. Our first presentation to the committee will center on the university's preparation for our upcoming accreditation review in 2025. Typically, accreditation reaffirmation includes every 10 years, and both the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses are due in 25-26. Today's presentation will seek to inform the committee on the process for reaccreditation and the progress that we're making. We'll provide a high-level overview on what institutional accreditation is and why it's important, and how we as a university are preparing for this review. Joining me for this presentation is Vice Provost and Dean of Undergraduate Education, Bob McMaster, who you all know, and Dr. Aaron Slattengren, who serves as the university's accreditation liaison officer. Dr. Slattengren holds a PhD in higher education from the College of Education and Human Development. She's been a member of the Provost's Office senior staff for 5 years. She serves as my liaison for specialized accreditations, which we'll discuss in a bit, and the university's liaison to the Higher Learning Commission, which the Twin Cities, Rochester campuses, for the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses. And she oversees the overall process by which we review the efficacy of our degree programs throughout the university. The Impact 2025 System-Wide Strategic Plan calls for the university to enhance the quality and support of educational offerings through both program reviews, which Dr. Slattengren supervises, and accreditation at both the college and campus levels. HLC accreditation is an imperative step to maintaining the highest standards of quality in the academic experience that we deliver. The U.S. Department of Education requires institutional accreditation in order to disperse federal financial aid. As they describe it, the goal of accreditation is to ensure that institutions of higher education meet acceptable levels of quality. I want to highlight that accreditation is different from rankings. Rankings compare and categorize institutions using various measures and scales of achievement. In contrast, accreditation is a foundational standard for all colleges and universities. Institutions that lose their accreditations cease to become universities. There are two main types of accreditation for institutions of higher education. Institutional accreditation, which is also known as regional accreditation, and specialized, also known as programmatic accreditation. Specialized accreditation involves specific professions and typically applies to programs, departments, or schools that are part of a larger institution. An accredited unit could be as large as a college or a school, like the medical school or the School of Nursing, or as small as a curriculum within a discipline. The Twin Cities campus currently holds more than 120 specialized accreditations. Some examples include the Doctor of Pharmacy program, which is accredited by the Council for Pharmacy Education, our engineering programs, which are accredited by the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, known as ABET, the law school, which is accredited by the American Bar Association, and our business programs, which are accredited by the Association to Advance Collegiate Schools of Business, or AACSB. Our presentation today instead focuses on institutional accreditation, as I said, referred to as regional accreditation. 85% of higher education institutions in the United States are regionally accredited. Regional accreditation applies to the entire institution, including those 120 units that hold their own specialized accreditation. Accreditation indicates that each entity will contribute to the overall mission, whether they're individually accredited or not. Institutional or regional accrediting organizations are recognized by the U.S. Department of Education and the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, CHIA. The council oversees accrediting agencies and affirms that the standards and process for each regional accreditor are consistent with the accountability expectations set out by the Department of Education. There are 7 regional accrediting agencies for higher education institutions in the U.S., and they're organized geographically, regionally, with one in each of the Midwest, that's the HLC, which we're accredited under, but also one in the Mid-Atlantic, one in New England, one in the Northwest, and one in the South. There are 2 in the West, one for community colleges and one for senior colleges. Regional accreditors evaluate all sizes and types of degree-granting colleges and universities, public and private, community college, 4-year, doctoral granting. The HLC, the Higher Learning Commission, is the regional accreditor for all of the University of Minnesota's campuses. From here, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Slattengren to tell us more about the HLC and the institutional accreditation review cycle.
Chair Johnson, members of the committee, thank you, Provost Croson, for the introduction and providing an overview of the purpose and types of accreditation. As an institutional accreditor, the HLC evaluates the university as a whole, validating the quality of our degree offerings, whether in person, online, or at another location. HLC also reviews governance and administrative processes, adherence to mission, and sustainability of resources. HLC utilizes a peer review model and trains professionals from its member institutions to serve as reviewers. The university participates in what's known as the Open Pathway 10-year review cycle, and these are the regular review activities within the cycle. Our last comprehensive review and reaffirmation of accreditation was in 2015. Each year, we submit an institutional update to HLC providing data on our financial operations and educational offerings and confirming compliance with federal requirements. At year 4 in mid-cycle, and again at year 10, as part of the comprehensive review, the HLC completes an assurance review to ensure institutions are continuing to meet the criteria for accreditation. For this step, the university submits a comprehensive report that demonstrates compliance. The Open Pathway cycle is focused on quality improvement and affords the university an opportunity to pursue an improvement effort of their choice. During years 5 through 9 of the cycle, institutions undertaken a quality initiative project. Our current quality initiative is focused on course design strategies for faculty and instructors to address student mental health and well-being in the learning environment. Throughout the accreditation cycle, we are also required to report any substantive changes to the institution, such as opening a new location. In year 10, institutions undergo a comprehensive evaluation to reaffirm our accreditation status. The Twin Cities and Rochester will undergo a comprehensive evaluation in 2025. All of the campuses in our system are accredited by the HLC. The overview today is focused on the upcoming evaluation for the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses, which are jointly accredited. At the Council of HLC, Rochester is accredited as a branch campus with the Twin Cities. Branch campuses are defined as independent from the main campus in that they are geographically separate, permanent, have their own academic leaders, faculty, administration, and budgetary authority, but they have some shared structure with the main campus. The Crookston, Duluth, and Morris campuses are separately accredited by HLC and are at various points of their 10-year cycle. Crookston will also undergo a comprehensive evaluation in the spring of 2025, just before the Twin Cities and Rochester. Duluth is in the quality initiative phase, and Morris just completed their mid-cycle review this past November. Each of these 3 campuses has their own accreditation liaison officer with whom I coordinate. There are 4 components of the 10-year comprehensive evaluation, and we will cover each of these components in the following slides. The assurance argument is due to HLC on September 1st, 2025, 4 weeks before our campus visit from a peer review team. The assurance argument is a written report describing how we meet each of HLC's criteria for accreditation. This report is approximately 100 pages in length. It will include an evidence file of materials that substantiate our argument. The evidence file includes sources and links to relevant policies, assessment and curriculum reports, agendas and minutes from governance committees, and all types of materials that display our processes to maintain the quality of our academic enterprise. In our previous assurance argument, we provided more than 500 pieces of evidence. The team of peer reviewers from HLC assigned to conduct our campus visit will review our assurance argument prior to the visit. The goal of the assurance argument is to tell a thorough and compelling story within HLC's criteria for accreditation framework about how we ensure the academic quality of our institution and we meet the commitments of our mission. It is an opportunity to highlight institutional strengths and describe our quality assurance processes. These are the 5 criteria for accreditation. Within the 5 criteria, there are 18 core components and 68 subcomponents. This information is all included in your docket materials. As a federally recognized regional accreditor, HLC is required to assure its member institutions are meeting Title IV responsibilities in order to remain eligible to provide federal financial aid. We will submit a federal compliance filing that provides responses and evidence documenting our compliance in these 8 areas. We are especially grateful for the board's continued attention to protections of student privacy and other items on this list. Prior to the site visit, HLC conducts an online survey of the student body. The results are intended to identify possible questions for the peer review team for its meetings with faculty, staff, and students during the site visit. The survey and the results are solely used to allow students a way to participate in this process. They are not used for ranking or comparison purposes. They are not published. I'd now like to turn it over to Vice Provost and Dean McMaster to talk about the campus visit component of the evaluation.
A major component of the HLC comprehensive evaluation process is the peer review team campus visit. Approximately 4 weeks after submission of our assurance argument and federal compliance filing, a team of 5 to 7 reviewers will come to campus for an on-site review. The review team chair typically comes from a similar type of institution. The review team chair works directly with the institution to develop an agenda for the visit, which lasts approximately 1.5 to 2 days. While the chair is typically from a peer institution, other members of the team can come from a variety of institutions with a variety of perspectives on higher education, and not all members of the review team will be from institutions that are true peers to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. The team stays on an additional day for deliberations to consult with each other, and during this period can request additional information or interpretation of the results. A typical site visit includes meetings with academic leadership, board members, faculty, students, and other individuals and groups involved in preparing the materials for the comprehensive evaluation. There will be open forums scheduled with stakeholders. The review team will dive deeper into topics of their specific interest as determined through the review of the insurance argument, federal compliance review, and student opinion survey, or areas of priority or focus as determined by the Higher Learning Commission. As I mentioned, peer review committees will have the opportunity to ask questions and request information about various topics of interest to them and to HLC. One area that the HLC normally focuses on, not surprisingly, is around the assessment of student learning, where the University of Minnesota Twin Cities has a well-established set of policies and procedures in this area. During the 2015 site visit, the HLC review team had some additional questions and requested additional information on this topic after the formal review was over. The HLC review committee also, during the 2015 review, requested a random set of course syllabi to evaluate. In this case, they were auditing courses to ensure that the stated credit hours on the syllabus matched the actual in-time classroom time or other related course activities. Chair Johnson, I'll now turn it back to Aaron to tell you about the final component of the comprehensive evaluation.
As referenced earlier, the Rochester campus is also part of the comprehensive review and reaccreditation. The Rochester campus will submit a separate report, and a campus visit will be conducted by one member of the peer review team on September 29th or 30th during the evaluation process. Chair Johnson, I'd like to turn it back to Provost Croson to tell you about our planning and preparation.
Thank you. So we're actively preparing for the HLC comprehensive evaluation and reaffirmation of accreditation. As part of this process, I've convened a reaccreditation academic leadership advisory committee. The committee includes representation from vice provosts, deans, associate deans, faculty governance, and other academic program leaders. I've also convened a reaccreditation administrative steering committee. The steering committee includes staff leaders from the provost office, the Office of Undergraduate Education, the Graduate School, Budget and Finance, Faculty Affairs, and Institutional Analytics. Those individuals will work directly with units and colleges to draft content, identify evidence, and prepare our assurance argument and federal compliance filings, and to work with the HLC team to plan logistics for the site visit. The administrative steering committee is responsible for preparing the assurance argument and other materials. The leadership advisory committee will provide direction and review those materials before submission. A separate Rochester committee has been established to prepare the Rochester report and plan for the Rochester site visit. University engagement of faculty, students, staff, and university leaders and stakeholders is a critical part of preparation for this comprehensive review. We'll be updating the university community in multiple ways over the next 18 months via the Provost Accreditation website, messaging in the brief, and other university newsletters and listservs, and through presentations to standing committees and groups. But we wanted to start with this group first. We want to make sure that you continue to be updated as we move through this process. This presentation was our first step. The Administrative Steering Committee will likely have a draft of the assurance argument about a year from now in spring 25, which will be open for public comment for anyone in the university community. After receiving and integrating those comments, we will likely schedule either another presentation or a robust memo in the summer before our site visit, so in summer 25. If the HLC review team requests to meet with the Board of Regents or board leadership during their visit in September 2025, we'll be sure to let you know and brief you in advance. This link provides the website where additional information will be posted as our preparation moves forward. Chair Johnson, this concludes our presentation. We will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Provost Croson, Dr. Slettergren, Vice Provost McMaster. Regent students, any questions? Regent
Thank you,
Turner.
Chair Johnson and Provost Croson. So I heard in there, this makes JACO coming to a local hospital look like small potatoes.
That's what I was thinking.
And then, but I heard the word regent. I heard the word that, I mean, will we get, especially us new ones, you know, because we're on the list of people that they could potentially. And so just like you would the nurses, you know, getting ready for JACO, will we have any kind of training just in case we're one of those that are nabbed by them and, or, you know, to ask questions? What kind of questions would they ask us? How would we, you know, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Chair Johnson, Regent Turner, absolutely. We should know, again, not this summer, but next summer, exactly what their agenda is likely to be. And to the extent that includes you, we would certainly meet with you and brief you and prep you for the questions they're looking at. It is indeed a very involved process.
I think I had this similar reaction to Regent Turner. I've been involved in medical school and in residency program reviews, but the scope and scale of this is really stunning. So, Student Representative Vasilopoulos.
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson, Provost Croson. Thank you, representatives. I had two questions. I'll ask the first one first. So the Higher Learning Commission's Student Opinion Survey will take place in April of 2025. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what that looked like last time in 2015, what student engagement was like, and how we could possibly partner with your team and RSGAs and student leaders on the Twin Cities and Rochester campus to ensure student engagement when the survey goes out.
Chair Johnson, Regent Vasilopoulos. Sorry. My understanding is the survey is a lot about communication to students and sort of their level of satisfaction with understanding advising or getting advising and understanding admissions, and it's a scale like that. I don't know the level of participation in the last one, but from what I hear from, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit, from what I hear from other institutions, it's usually pretty low in terms of how many students participate in that, but it does give the peer review team some information from the student body to work with and ask questions of students when they come to campus. So what happens is we get an email with very specific instructions about how to send that out to our student body. And we do it on their behalf, but they give us all the verbiage and everything that we need to send out. And there's a calendar with that, and you have to send a reminder on a certain date, and they're very specific about how they lay out. We don't have a lot of say in how that happens. Vice Provost McMaster may add more.
Sure. Chair Johnson and Representative, in the last iteration of this, we were kind of surprised actually when we found out about the survey. We weren't expecting it. And unfortunately, it came up right against our SERU, the Survey of Engagement at the Research University, which undoubtedly impacted the rate of student participation. The rate overall was quite low on this. And The questions, many of the questions are really those that we also get out of the CIRU, which is a much more, as you know, hopefully you've taken it, a much more comprehensive and thorough survey. So it's helpful, but really our main survey instrument remains CIRU.
Yeah, I appreciate that context. I imagine that the participation was low. And so as we think about strategic partnerships between board and the administration and staff members and student leaders, I'm wondering if we could possibly partner on making sure that students fill that survey out. My second question was about the Higher Learning Commission's site visit in fall of 2025. The presentation document here has included what the typical site visit looks like. It included forum discussions with students. And so I was wondering what those forums look like and how students can either best prepare, how student leaders or student government associations can help ensure student engagement in those site visits.
Yeah, sure. Chair Johnson, Representative, certainly the student forums are critical for the HLC. And as I remember last time, now this is 10 years old and I'm aging, so I don't remember clearly, but they weren't well attended. I don't think any of the forums were all that well attended. So I think your engagement, student government's engagement, early on to try to let students know the importance of this process, when the meeting's going to be, to encourage as many students as possible to participate in those would be great. I think the review team highly values the interaction with students while they're on campus.
Thank you.
Thank you. A student representative, Arimu.
Thank you. Chair Johnson and Provost Croxon. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm going to follow up on what my colleague has just said. I acknowledge the fact that you're doing a good job to engage students, but in the preparation committee, would you be including students in that committee for the sake of mentorship or something like that, or for transition in the future? That's my first question.
Provost Croson.
Chair Johnson, Representative Arimu, that's a great idea and suggestion. We have in the past included graduate students in the College of Education, especially those that are interested in higher education administration. In fact, that's how we got Erin into this position, because she had been a PhD student at the time. I don't know that in the past we've necessarily included undergrads, but I do like that idea. And so it's something we can bring back to the group and see if they were responsive to it.
Excellent. Thank you. Second question would be, okay, on the expectation, student expectation in terms of, I'm talking about retention this time. So in the accreditation requirement, I did not find something about students' enrollment versus retention. Is there a ratio that is required for us to pass the accreditation requirement? Do you understand my question?
Chair Johnson, Representative, the HLC criteria for accreditation does not get that specific in terms of providing ratios, or there are some assumed practices that they provide, numbers of credits that we have to meet and things like that. But in terms of enrollment and retention and persistent numbers, we tell our story. That is up to us to tell them how we are, what our goals are and how we are meeting them. And we tell a story in a forward-thinking way and provide our own evidence and documentation. But no, they do not get quite that specific within the criteria for accreditation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I don't have a question, but I just want to give a tremendous thank you. I know how much work this is. It's a lot of work, and it's not just for one event. It's 10 years, and another 10 years, and goes on. So all levels of employees are engaged, so just want to give a huge shout out to the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other, Regent Mayron?
Yes. So given this does cover a 10-year span, how much of the time and focus is on what's happening currently at the time they're doing the accreditation examination versus what happened over the preceding 9.5 years? And I think about, for example, the student survey that they will do. That's going to pick up the opinions of current students. what it isn't going to pick up is those students who have left the university or graduated. So how much is focus on current practices versus historical practices over that preceding 9 years?
Yeah, Chair Johnson, Regent Mayron, I'll go first and then I'll let Dr. Slatengren chime in. So the short answer is both. We've been filing updates with them every year. So they have, and that's part of their packet, they have all of the updates that we've been including. And as Dr. Slatengren mentioned, when we tell our story, we would include, for example, survey results from the CERO survey around student engagement. So in that sense, it's comprehensive. On the other hand, they are indeed looking for what we're doing now. And if there's an area where perhaps we have, I don't want to say have been out of compliance, but we're not necessarily as aligned as we could be, and we have improved that over the course of the 10 years, that would be something they'd be looking for. So it's not just the snapshot, and it's not just the additiveness of all 10 years, it's the trajectory. Thank you. But I'll ask Dr. Slatengren to chime in if she has anything else.
Chair Johnson, Representative, I would just add that as we saw, it's a 10-year cycle, and so it isn't a full review of since 2015. It is the most comprehensive, but in 2020, we submitted a full assurance argument as well with evidence. They just didn't conduct, the difference is they didn't conduct a site visit. So they are continually in touch with us. They are continually letting us know what we should be paying attention to. As you probably can imagine, over the last few years, there's been a lot of changes. There's a lot more emphasis on online learning and interest around that and how we are ensuring quality around online learning. So we will be talking to that quite a bit in our assurance argument. And as Vice Provost McMaster mentioned in the last one, they were very interested in assessment of student learning. So there are a lot of topics that they look out into the higher education world and say, we want to hear a lot about this and what you're doing about this.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from, okay. Currently not. Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Slatengren and Vice Provost McMaster, for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have a discussion on term faculty and instructional staff on the Twin Cities campus with Provost Croson and Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs, Beth Lewis. Regent Croson, would you like to start, please?
Thank you, Chair Johnson, Vice Chair Kenyanya, and members of the committee. Our next presentation to the committee will center on the varied contributions of term or contract faculty and instructional staff to the university's mission. The university has a wide variety of individuals who contribute to the teaching and learning pursuits on every campus. Today's presentation will focus on the faculty and instructional staff at the Twin Cities. We last presented on this topic in May 2022 in conjunction with Ned Patterson, who at the time was the chair of the Faculty Consultative Committee. As was foreshadowed in that presentation, faculty governance has formed a Senate subcommittee and a separate task force focused on term faculty and instructional staff. We are expecting recommendations from those groups later this year. And since many of you were not on the board in 2022, we wanted to offer some background in advance of those recommendations. This presentation will focus on the Twin Cities campus, which, as you will see, employs over 1,300 FTE term faculty and instructional staff. At Duluth and Crookston, there are 219 term faculty and instructional staff, but the term faculty on those campuses are covered by unique collective bargaining agreements that makes their employment situation different. At Morris and Rochester, there are 63 term faculty and instructional staff. Many of the processes we'll describe today apply to those campuses as well, but we're going to be providing peer comparisons with other Big Ten universities, so we wanted to focus our presentation on the Twin Cities. Joining me for this presentation is Dr. Beth Lewis, Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs. Dr. Lewis has been a faculty member at the University of Minnesota for the past 16 years. She served as the department chair in the School of Kinesiology in the College of Education and Human Development for 6 years. And during the last academic year, she was one of 3 faculty fellows in the office, while Dr. Rebecca Ropers was away on her ACE fellowship. After an internal search, Dr. Lewis was named vice provost in July 2023. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Vice Provost Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Croson, Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to present. Before we provide information on the work being done related to term faculty and instructional staff, we would like to describe the various instructional and faculty categories. So first, tenure system faculty advance the tripartite mission of the institution. According to the Board of Regents policy on faculty tenure, tenure system faculty may have varying levels of time allocated to research, teaching, and service, but they must make contributions in all of these areas. Term faculty are typically engaged in 1 or 2 of these functions, sometimes fueling grant-funded research in a given area with no or minimal teaching or service responsibilities, or perhaps fulfilling a critical teaching or clinical function with no or limited teaching responsibilities or research responsibilities. The majority of term faculty in the health sciences engage in clinical and/or research activities. Academic professionals or P&A instructional staff mostly engage in teaching. The majority of academic professionals advance the teaching mission of the institution in a variety of ways, but this broad P&A classification also can include researchers, librarians, and extension educators. These professionals tend to be focused primarily on one program, initiative, or area of teaching expertise. Adjunct faculty is a broad term that typically refers to individuals who teach 1 or 2 courses per year on a regular or one-time basis and who do not hold full-time positions in the university. Adjunct faculty may hold may hold titles associated with faculty or instructional staff, such as those described above, for example, adjunct assistant professor or teaching specialist. Adjunct faculty typically have a primary professional occupation elsewhere and are hired to teach courses specific to their profession. Examples include practicing architects who teach in the College of Design, musicians who teach in the School of Music, and full-time lawyers teaching in the law school. My home department, which is the School of Kinesiology, employs dozens of adjunct faculty who teach courses ranging from physical education courses in fencing or other sports, or in regular classroom courses. Most adjunct faculty are generally paid per credit hour or a rate set for individual courses. These rates vary greatly from college to college and are determined by factors such as credentials and degree level, type of course, so undergraduate or graduate, large lecture versus seminar, and market forces. Here's the overall breakdown of tenure system faculty, term faculty, and instructional staff, including part-time adjuncts in those categories. As you can see, across the institution as a whole, we have just under 2/3 tenure system faculty and just over 1/3 term faculty and instructional staff in full-time or part-time positions, including part-time adjuncts. However, the majority in this last category are in the medical school. In fact, the profile of the medical school is the inverse of the university as a whole, with 2/3 term faculty or instructional staff and 1/3 tenure system faculty. This is due to the large number of clinicians' clinical faculty. If we calculate the ratios excluding the medical school, we have 80% tenure system faculty and 20% term faculty or instructional staff in full-time or part-time positions. As a reminder, we also have 97, which is 61%, tenure system faculty, and 63, which is 39% term faculty and instructional staff in Rochester and Morris. But that is not the focus of our presentation today. As can be seen by this chart, comparing us to other Big Ten institutions, we are not unique in our reliance on faculty who are not in the tenure system. All Big Ten institutions rely on term faculty and instructional staff to advance the missions of their universities. As can be seen from this table, the University of Minnesota is in line with our peers in the proportion of tenure system faculty. There are full-time equivalent data from a shared higher education data collection exchange called IPEDS, the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System. Because medical schools have a high proportion of term faculty with primary clinical duties, campuses without medical schools are likely to report a higher proportion of tenure system faculty overall, which is why Purdue is such an outlier relative to our Big Ten peers. Term faculty and instructional staff, whether full-time or part-time, bring significant value to the university's students and community. For example, students have the opportunity to learn from practicing lawyers, architects, artists, and other professionals in the field. It also allows for flexibility in hiring situations, such as unexpected increases in enrollment, or if tenure system faculty receive teaching releases for sabbaticals or research grant support. It also allows for instructors whose sole focus is to engage in high quality and innovative teaching to students and/or clinical activities. To provide a better understanding of the types of roles and responsibilities that term faculty, instructional staff, and adjunct faculty engage in, we would like to provide some examples. First, Nishani McCluskey is a full-time P&A instructional staff member who has been in the Department of Educational Psychology for 7 years. She teaches American Sign Language and is certified by the American Sign Language Teachers Association. She teaches multiple sections of introductory sign language. Hiring instructional staff, such as Nishani, allows for smaller course sizes for a better student experience. Her incredible work in Sri Lankan deaf leaders also exposes students to real-world international community efforts related to the course. Roger Conlon is a full-time P&A instructional staff member who has been in the Carlson School of Business in the accounting department for 12 years. He teaches international taxation, corporate tax, mergers and acquisitions, and tax policy. Roger brings a wealth of knowledge to the classroom as a result of his professional career, which includes serving as a tax partner at Deloitte for 27 years and experience in Washington, D.C., serving as a special advisor in the Office of Chief Counsel. Taxation is a highly specialized professional field, and Roger's past experience brings real-world experience into the classroom. Roger is an incredible instructor and has won the Carlson School Teaching Award. He describes his teaching at Carlson as the best second career anyone can have. Teresa Fong has served as a part-time faculty member in the School of Dentistry for 4 years. She is responsible for the pediatric dental education of pre-doctoral dental students. She was a pediatric dentist for 31 years prior to taking her current position at the University of Minnesota. Her numerous years of experience as a practitioner provide students with incredible knowledge and training relevant to their future careers. Stephen Andreessen has been a part-time adjunct faculty member who has taught on a class-by-class basis in the Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs for 24 years. He teaches national security policy and crisis management in foreign affairs. He's a national security consultant to the Nuclear Threat Initiative and its nuclear security project in Washington, D.C., and previously served as a staff director for the National Security Council. Students benefit from the valuable information and insight he brings to the classroom as a result of his unique work experience. Viet Do is a part-time adjunct faculty in the College of Design who teaches part-time on a class-by-class basis as his time allows outside of his consulting business. He teaches principles of design, graphic studio, and typography. His background as a freelance designer provides students with unique opportunity to learn about design solutions for big national brands. So, as Provost Croson mentioned in the introduction, the University and Faculty Senate, as well as Senate committees, have recently brought additional attention to term faculty and instructional staff appointments. There is a new standing Faculty Senate subcommittee called the Term Faculty and Academic Professionals Senate Subcommittee that was formed 2 years ago. This subcommittee focuses on matters related to term faculty and academic professionals and advocates for policies, practices, and procedures that impact them. There is also a task force on academic freedom and term appointment, which was created last year out of the AF&T Standing Committee. This task force was created as a result of the Faculty Senate resolution concerning academic freedom and term appointment in 2022. The task force is charged with making recommendations to safeguard academic freedom for term faculty and instructional staff who are not eligible for indefinite tenured employment. Two recent resolutions from the University Senate and Faculty Senate address term faculty and instructional staff. The first is the University Senate Workforce Reinvestment Resolution, which has called for normalizing the currently permitted practice of multi-year contracts for term faculty and instructional staff, and providing increased involvement in departmental governance related to their roles, such as curriculum development. This resolution has also called for establishing an annual minimum per credit hour pay floor for adjunct teaching. The university is working on implementing these recommendations, as I will discuss later. The second resolution was the Driven to Recover, a faculty consultative committee report on the competitiveness of faculty compensation, which FCC Chair Mark B. presented to the board at its December meeting, and includes salary comparisons of term faculty and instructional staff across peer institutions. Finally, our policies require each college to produce an academic personnel plan report every 5 years, which describes their use of term faculty and instructional staff. These plans were collected in fall 2023 and provided to the Committee on Academic Freedom and Tenure for their review. I will also say more about those plans in a few slides. Our office is committed to working with university governance and the Office of Human Resources to advance our efforts on the range of issues related to term faculty and instructional staff that have been and will be identified. We're always concerned about and monitoring the engagement of all of our employees. The university's latest engagement survey, which most recently was administered to all employees in the university in fall 2023, shows there is relatively little variation in overall satisfaction among tenure system faculty, term faculty, and instructional staff, as measured on key survey items. The chart shows survey results related to questions on commitment and dedication to the workplace, effective work environment, and intent to stay. The previous slide indicated similar job satisfaction ratings across tenure system faculty, term faculty, and instructional staff. However, we are always working to continue to improve the job satisfaction of all of our employees. We will look forward to continuing to engage with university governance, including continuing to comply with current policy and reporting like the 5-year academic personnel plans. As I alluded to previously, our office is working with the Office of Human Resources in colleges and departments to address the range of issues related to term faculty and instructional staff that have already been raised. For example, colleges have developed or are in the process of developing clear promotional criteria for promotion and advancement, and we are exploring further developing these promotional pathways. We're also working on exploring creating an annual minimum per credit pay floor for university-wide for adjunct teaching and advocating for greater inclusion of term faculty and instructional staff in decision-making and governance within departments. In addition to providing the academic personnel plans to the Faculty Senate Committee on Academic Freedom and Tenure, we are ourselves reviewing those plans to better understand the current use of term faculty and instructional staff. We have already made some progress in these areas. Examples include improving job security through normalizing multi-year contracts, college establishing pathways for promotion and advancement for long-serving term faculty and academic staff, as mentioned previously, and expanding eligibility for teaching and service awards. As stated previously, we are looking forward to receiving additional recommendations from faculty governance. Chair Johnson, that concludes our presentation, and we would be happy to answer any questions. Here are 2 questions we are particularly interested in hearing about from you: the principles we should follow in creating a portfolio of types of faculty, and additional ideas for support. However, we are happy to take any questions related to term faculty, instructional staff, and adjunct faculty.
Thank you very much, Vice Provost Lewis, for your presentation. So Regents, let's turn now to our discussion. Regent Gully.
First of all, Chair, thank you. And thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate it. First of all, I just want to say I'm really happy to hear at the end of your presentation you were talking about some things that are really close to me. So just to give a little bit of context, I don't know that that we've talked about this before, but I was an adjunct at the U for about 7 years in the leadership minor, which was a program that was entirely adjuncts. So there were, except for administrative positions, there were no full-time or tenure track positions at all. And so I have strong feelings about this. So I want to start by saying that I'm really grateful to hear that we're exploring options for promotional process for term faculty, that we're exploring improving the salary floor for term faculty and for adjuncts. And I hope that I'm understanding that right, but I think that that's incredibly important, that we're considering teaching and service awards. I know that as an adjunct, it can feel very much like you're left out of this bubble where all of this work is recognized and where there's a lot of support for it and where there's a lot of resources for it. And you are, for a lot of us who have worked as adjuncts, it is our full-time work, and we stay and we do it and we love it and we care about the students. And I'm including myself in this, even though I've continued as an educator, not at the University of Minnesota, but it's work that people do because they love it. And it can feel sort of isolating to be in this position where you know how much where you're hearing from your students how much your work means, and yet not getting recognized in any meaningful way. So thank you for that. I do have some questions. First of all, I would like to know the actual number of adjunct faculty and not just the percent of the FTEs. I understand that that's one way of looking at it, but I think that that sort of dehumanizes the number of the actual individuals who are doing that work. Although I appreciated that you showed some of the term and adjunct faculty who have been a part of our community for a long time. So thank you for that. But I'd love to know actual numbers of people. I don't know if we actually know how many of our faculty, our term faculty and adjuncts, actually hold full-time benefited positions other places. I think that sometimes that's the mythology that we tell ourselves and not a reflection of the reality. And while I realize that that's different in different, it's going to have different relation to different departments and colleges, right? Some places we can point to and we can say, yes, perhaps, and just making up an example, but perhaps all of the people who are teaching as term faculty in the medical school are also engaged other places. I don't think that's true for a lot of people in the university, and I'd be interested to know if that is backed up by information that we actually know, or if it's just something that we tell ourselves. I'd also like to know how many of our term faculty and adjuncts teach full-time teaching loads every year and how long they've been around. I know that we have a position as the adjuncts, as the regents, we have policies around this, and I'd be interested to know if our policies actually play out across the university. And how do we ensure that our term faculty and adjuncts are getting the support that they need to learn to teach? We are a teaching institution, and the work that we do with our students is it's our bread and butter. It's how we create the next generation of researchers and lawyers and doctors and teachers and everything else. And I know as an educator that the first day you walk into the classroom, you don't have a clue what you're doing. And that the work that we do to prepare educators is incredibly important. And I think it often, in the casualization of work, we underestimate how hard it is to learn to do that work. And so I'd be interested to know what we're doing to support term and adjunct faculty in particular as they learn to do this work. And then the possibility of creating incentives for people to stay. I'm very interested in these promotional pathways. I wish that we were a leader in that work. I don't care how we compare to peer institutions. I'd like us to be better. So I'd like us to be better. I'd like us to figure out ways to get people in. I'd like to possibly talk about opening up the Regents scholarship for folks who are adjunct and tenure and adjunct and term faculty, so that they have the possibility of improving their work and possibly becoming, finding places on the tenure system. I know that's a lot, so I appreciate you listening and considering my questions, and I understand that not all of them probably have answers today, but.
Maybe I'll chime in. Chair Johnson, Regent Kelly, thank you for all of those questions. As I indicated previously, we can certainly follow up on things like headcount and other questions that you have. I don't know that we have information about other employment, but we can look. Of course, we can talk about the personnel plans and how they're constructed and how they're shared. On the learning how to teach, we offer a number of different programs that are open to everyone to help all of our instructors, adjunct, tenure stream, PhD students who are teaching for the first time, because we do care about the quality of their education. And in fact, the Center for Educational Innovation, which is the main provider of those services, is also under Vice Provost Lewis. And so that organization provides not only formal training, but also individual coaching and a whole set of activities around training. That said, we don't require that, we offer it, right? So that's a different kind of thing. We are, as Vice Provost Lewis mentioned, we have a number of units which have promotional pathways. There are some units that don't, or they don't use them all, and so that's a matter of kind of coordination and making sure that we do this. And then I'll let Vice Provost Lewis talk about the Regents Scholarship, because I know we've made some changes to the Regents Scholarship, but my understanding is that all full-time employees, including full-time term faculty, are eligible for the Regents Scholarship. I don't know what the rule is about part-time.
Yes, there has been improvements made in terms of there was some various rules around it of who would qualify, who wouldn't qualify, and that has become more wider in terms of who can qualify, who cannot qualify. So that has happened in terms of making that more widely available. So.
Okay. Thank you. Regent Mayron.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Picking up on what Regent Gully, some of her questions, my two questions have again to do with job security and promotional pathways. You talked about it.
Rachel. Provost Croson.
Provost Croson. It's hard when you're used to calling people by their first name. Get it all out. But I'd like some examples, if you could share some of what those promotional pathways look like. And along those lines, I recall, and this may have been when we were at one of the other campuses, it may have been Duluth, where they do use adjunct professors and term faculty. And one of the comments or complaints that we heard is that they are hired on basically for a year at a time. And so there doesn't appear to them that they have a career pathway to get out of that. But more importantly, some felt stymied by the fact that they couldn't do any long-range planning because their contracts are only for a year, and that some of the things that they're trying to train their students about may be a 2-3 multi-year type of endeavor. And so how we are addressing that with these classifications of employees.
So in terms of promotional pathways, we have lecturer and senior lecturer within the P&A instructional staff. And then we have teaching specialists and senior teaching specialists within the P&A administrative staff. And then within the term faculty, depending on what their official title is, if it's teaching professor, it would be assistant teaching professor. They will get promoted to associate teaching professor and then teaching professor. So 3 levels there. And I know there's been a significant amount of work within the colleges lately in terms of really outlining those promotional paths and what is required in each of for promotion in each of those paths. And so there are some set promotional paths already in place, and we're continuing to work on that. In terms of the commitment and the long term, and I can completely understand what you're saying in terms of there's a lot of work that goes into creating a course and maintaining a course. And so if you're not knowing that you're going to teach the next year, within the lecturers, senior lecturer, teaching specialist roles, there is a required notice of non-renewal based on how long you've been there. So you can have a notice of non-renewal depending on how long you've been there, up to a year. So you have to actually give them a year in advance, which will often be a year and a half, depending on if you're where you are in the semester. So there is some of that. I can comment based on my own home department of kinesiology. We had senior lecturers there was one who was there 20 years, 10 years. We have some that are there now that have been there many, many years. And, I obviously can't speak on their behalf, but I think there is some sort of security there in terms of just knowing that they'll be able to come back year after year. So I hope that answers your question.
I have a couple follow-up questions. And so on the pathways, it sounds like the pathways, though, still are within the whole concept of either the tenure system, the term contract, or the academic professionals. I'm not hearing, and I'm not suggesting that there should be. I don't know the answer to this, but it doesn't sound like there's a pathway to move on to a more traditional position within the university that's perhaps leads to tenure track or something like that. It's a pathway within this classification of these, I'm going to call them more term-like employees. Am I correct about that in terms of pathway?
Yes, Chair Johnson, Regent Marin. Yes, so what... I think how to say. So yes, a lot of times, let's take the lecturer as an example. They're primarily going to be teaching. And in order to be a tenure track faculty member, you need to be doing all 3 missions: service, teaching, and research. So it is difficult then to, just move them into a position. If there was a posting for a tenure track position and that lecturer wanted to apply for that and they were qualified to do that position, they could do that. But we don't move them from one role to another just because they are very different types of positions that they haven't, that they haven't necessarily been doing all 3 missions of the university. So.
And then my second question has to do, am I correct that the contracts for any of these individuals are they're year contracts? And if that's so, has there been any notion of perhaps doing multi-year contracts so as to create not only greater job security, but also the ability, as you say, you develop a course and then the next year you have no assurance you're going to teach next year, other than you can, I guess, say, well, based on past practice, it looks like I will, but maybe you won't. And so to create more security, but also continuity for those teachers and then for students as well.
Yeah, for term faculty, there are multi-year contracts, definitely, that exist. And we are working towards doing more of those for P&A lecturers and teaching specialists as well. So they are available. And that is one of the things we're working with on faculty governance, is how can we support colleges and departments to utilize these multi-year contracts more often. But they are utilized, yes, already in the university, and they are available.
Thank you. Thank you. Student Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and Provost Croxton. To acknowledge or to appreciate the work your team have put into putting out these questions. So I thought I should touch on some of these questions that you have posed to us. In terms of principle for the portfolio of type of faculty you think we should follow, I was thinking, I think it would be nice. I know you have a principle that you've been following before. So it would be nice to see or to know what principles you actually follow, and if you're looking at reviewing that. than me coming up with new principles for you. I know you have something, and so so in short, I don't have an answer for that. For the second one, I kind of think, which I perhaps would assume you've been doing, is just to maintain this continued active engagement with each of the categories of folks that have been represented here.
Thank you.
Vice Provost Lewis?
Yeah, in terms of the, can you repeat the last part of your question? I'm sorry. The first part you were kind of commenting, the second.
Yeah, so it's more of if you're thinking of how can we continue to support these categories, my question is, do you have this active engagement? I would assume you do have it. So if you do, I think my response would just be to maintain that active engagement with each of them. They're the ones that could tell you how they can be well supported. For example, Regents really just gave us something which really made a lot of sense. So that's just, it's not really.
Yeah. Chair Johnson, thank you, Student Representative Arimo. Yeah, thank you.
Regent Gully?
Thank you. I'll keep this short because I've already spoken, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on Regent Mayron's question. You said that it was hard to move people between tracks because they're not doing all of the things, which I understand is the argument that's made all the time. I've heard it lots of times. As an adjunct, that is not, as a former adjunct, that was not my experience. As a person who knows a lot of current adjuncts, that's not the experience that they're having either. But their service to the university and their research often doesn't get recognized or tracked, which makes it very difficult and can be, in fact, stifling when they try to apply for positions that are tenure or tenure track. So, in fact, I've seen a lot of folks get trapped in being adjuncts because even though they're doing the similar work, I don't want to say it's apples to apples, but even though they're doing similar work to their tenure and tenure track peers, no one's paying attention to it and it's not being recognized. I wonder if there are ways that we can get better at that across the institution. I know I did things like I served on a whole bunch of committees. I trained other faculty members. I went to conferences. I even had sponsorship from my department to go and present at conferences when I had papers accepted. But that's my experience alone. But I hear this from adjuncts all the time at the university. And I don't know that you have an answer, or maybe it's not even just a question, but I would like us to get better at that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Regent Kenyanya?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation and the discussion. So I have a question about how we think about our makeup just overall as a profile. Tenure track and term faculty are different, right? But then there are some, I don't want to say equivalencies, but for example, as I think about it, okay, they both teach, right? We can start with that. But then, whereas the tenure track faculty may bring a unique perspective to teaching from their research, a term faculty might bring a unique perspective because of their industry background. And some of the examples we actually saw, their industry work and their current employment. The tenure track faculty may be engaged in some sort of work that ties to the third part of our mission, outreach. But again, the tenure track faculty may have some community work or something in that other employment we referred to that brings that unique perspective as well. So with that being said, in a given situation, in a given classroom, they're different, and I wouldn't say we should have this or that, right? However, because they're different, as our profile, if you think of it, we could have all tenure track faculty, all term faculty. We're obviously in between, and it seems like we've been moving in between, and all universities have, but including us have been moving. With that movement, what effects are there, broadly speaking, on the university, on campus, on teaching, not in any particular classroom, but with that trend on the university because of those differences?
Chair, Chair Johnson, Vice Chair Kenyanya, as with every university, we have seen a change in the distribution of tenure system and non-tenure system faculty. It is not as large as you might otherwise think. So for the university as a whole, on the FTE side, well, maybe I'll ask Vice Provost Lewis to give us the numbers about the tenure trend, because I'm not sure I have the most updated ones here.
Let's see on the trends for let me see where that was at. Yeah, we did have that somewhere.
We did pull this.
So over the last 9 or 10 years, the percentage of tenure system faculty has fallen from 70% in 2013 to 63% in 2021. But if you, that's including the medical school. So if you take the medical school out, it went from 86% to 80% where we are now.
So there have been some changes, but it's not like a, huge, right? We're not going from a majority to a minority, for example.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Okay. Then thank you very much, Vice Provost Lewis, for your presentation and answers.
Thank you.
Okay, now, colleagues, we need to make a decision. We've been meeting for about an hour and 10 minutes. We could take a break. On the other hand, we just have relatively few minutes left. I propose, if you're okay, that we proceed. Okay, we'll go for it. Okay, lunch comes after. All right, so this brings us to the consent report. Provost Croson, will you please provide a brief overview of the items in the consent report?
I thought I could, but there's.
Give her a minute.
Chair Johnson, members of the committee, I'm pleased to present the consent report for your consideration. You probably noticed that this month's consent report is more extensive than others we have reviewed this year. At our September meeting, I mentioned that the university was undergoing a transition of our curriculum management system. That transition, combined with the current academic year being a university catalog update year, resulted in a large number of program updates that are only now ready for board review and approval. Included in this month's academic program changes are 8 new academic programs, 22 academic programs that have requested changes, and 8 plans that are to be discontinued. The report also includes the conferral of tenure on 6 new faculty positions. These conferrals include 2 of the university system campus's newest vice chancellors. Dr. Sean Boyle recently joined the Crookston campus as its newest Associate Vice Chancellor for Business, Arts, and Education. And Dr. Joden Kofer is being recommended to assume the role of Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and the Dean on the Morris campus, effective July 1, 2024. The final item on today's consent report is for the approval of museum accessioning and deaccessioning policies for the Bell Museum. As you may recall from our last meeting, Board of Regents policies requires each museum or gallery to develop, maintain, and periodically update their policies for accessioning and deaccessioning their permanent collections. These policies and their amendments require board approval, and the docket contains the proposed policy changes, as well as a summary table, so you can see how the new policy differs from the existing policy. This consent report is presented with my and the interim president's recommendation for approval, and I'm pleased to take any questions.
So is there anyone who would like to ask a question, make a comment, or separate an item out from the report to be voted on separately before I make a motion to recommend approval of the consent? Regent Tad Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Provost Croson, I just, this is more of a comment and maybe a response from Provost Croson as to the steps we've taken to fix this problem. But for 30 years or so, we were out of compliance with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. And we had gone, in the 20s and 30s, the university went down to the Memphis River region and dug up a number of bodies and a number of funerary objects and brought them back. And I happened to be a young deputy counsel working as we were passing the NAGPRA Act in 1990. I was very surprised when I got here in 2019 that we were out of compliance. We are now coming into compliance, and a number of steps have been taken on this. And I understand Karen Diver and I think there's going to be
Peña.
a specialist. And I just wanted to get your comment on that and how we've improved on that, especially as we make policy and make new accessions under in the Bell Museum.
Chair Johnson, Regent Johnson, the members' collection is actually held in the Wiseman.
Right.
Rather than the Bell, and the Wiseman accession and deaccessioning policies we reviewed last meeting. But we have a new director for the Wiseman Museum, Alejandra Peña Gutierrez. She's been excellent in making really wonderful consultative progress on repatriating those remains and funerary objects. The board, you might remember, maybe before your time on the board, but I'm sure you were involved in it, voted to go ahead and do the repatriation. And we're coming, I would say, 2/3 along the way. There have been visits from the tribes in New Mexico that are the likely descendants of the individuals. There's been visits there. My understanding is at this point, those tribes are looking to identify a location for reburial, and that we're waiting to hear from them about that location. But if you'd like a more complete update, I can certainly connect you with Director Peña Gutierrez, and she can give you more details.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to, it's a cautionary tale. And I think everybody's kind of, I know Karen Diver, and I believe there's a new repatriation staff that's brought on board. So thank you. I just wanted to mention that.
And of course, there are many universities in this situation that are going through the same process, and we're sharing information, learning from each other.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Okay. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the consent report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion is approved. Okay, then finally, we're coming to informational items, so this brings us to that. And Provost Croson, is there anything to highlight?
Thank you, Chair Johnson, members of the committee. I'm pleased to present a number of reports included in this month's docket information items. The first is our regular report of select student, faculty, and staff accomplishments. It's been included in the docket, along with links you can follow to find more information. Of note in this report, the University of Minnesota became the country's first and only system of higher education to be awarded the Carnegie Elective Classification for Community Engagement in all of our campuses. This classification recognizes institutions of higher education that are aligned among campus mission, culture, leadership, resources, and practices that support dynamic and noteworthy community engagement. This was one of the goals in our system-wide strategic plan, and we're delighted that we've met that goal. Georgios Giaconis, the McKnight Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering, has been elected as an International Fellow for the Royal Academy of Engineering for his contributions to telecommunications. Ardashir Ebtalhaj, an Associate Professor of Civil, Environmental, and Geoengineering, is leading a $2.9 million NASA-funded project to better understand the decline in the cryosphere, which is the regions of the Earth where water freezes. And Noel Noyes, Associate Professor in the Veterinary Population Medicine, received $3.5 million of funding from multiple sources to lead a collaboration studying the transmission of viruses during co-mingling events, when unfamiliar animals come together in a defined space in time, or like the basketball game I recently attended among humans. The next three reports are mandated by the legislature, and we provide them for your information. They include the post-secondary institution voter registration report. This is required by from every higher ed institution in the state. It must be submitted annually to the Secretary of State. It includes each campus's efforts to register students to vote, as well as voter engagement plans. The Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory Expenditures Report. It reports on expenditures for the testing of various animal-borne diseases, such as chronic wasting disease, African swine fever, and avian influenza. And then the Minnesota P20 Education Partnership Report is a report to the governor and the chairs and ranking minority members of the legislative committees and divisions with jurisdiction over P12 education policy and finance that summarizes the partnership's progress in meeting its goals. Chair Johnson, this concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Provost Croson. That concludes this session, and with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.